reduce your breathing. Just let yourself self-settle, because of course the other option is you start to panic. Now, that panic will trigger the fight or flight response, which will cause you to hyperventilate. So it becomes kind of a vicious circle. So wheezing is always a first sign that something's going wrong. So if you hear that, start to back off on your breathing. Start to reduce your breathing, or the phrase we like is breathe like a little mouse. Now, coughing is an interesting thing, and Buteyko developed a way to cough that's different than how we normally cough. Now, when we cough, of course, we're going, and we're doing a huge exhale. So what's the immediate response? We breathe in, either through our mouth or through our nose. We take a very deep breath. So one thing Buteyko said is after you cough, do a 2-second breath hold. Just pause your breathing for just 2 seconds. Now, there's another aspect of this, which is that instead of like a loud propelling cough, it's more like clearing your throat. What Buteyko would have his students do, and what I'm suggesting to you, is to go like this. Then just a 2-second breath hold. In fact, when my wife Sasha and I are in Moscow, we'll be doing a lot of different things with Dr. Novozilov and Lyudmila Buteyko. And candidly, there will be times that it's more convenient for Sasha to communicate directly with them than to be translating. My Russian is extremely limited. And one day I was in one of the other offices and I coughed rather loudly. And I thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And it wasn't 20 seconds before Dr. Novozilov, who speaks English, came in the room and he said, Thomas, do you know the Buteyko cough? And he pinched his nose and had it out. So remember that. That'll help you greatly. Suffocation is another topic I've been asked to talk about today, and the word even itself is very frightening. There's a number of steps you can do when you start having trouble like that. Now, of course, if you're feeling that level of suffocation, you're already in a danger zone. You're already in a problem. And you'll hear often that the Buteyko method is spoken of as a drug-free method. And that is true in the sense that you are able to change the cause of your asthma or a number of other diseases. You're able to change the cause by changing your breathing. And that then removes the symptoms. And obviously, if you have no symptoms, you do not need to take medication. Now, we do not, however, encourage our students to stop taking medication. In our courses from our home study group to our primary course, Buteyko Method and Lifestyle, we will teach all of our students several different steps that they can do. And I'm always advising my students, well, try this, try these different aspects of the Buteyko Method. But we never say stop taking your medication. That's a natural process that will evolve and something we suggest that you speak with your medical doctor about. We are educators, we're not medical doctors. Now, one would hope that before the issue becomes so that you feel as if you're suffocating, that you've got an awareness to that. In fact, Dr. Buteyko's first question to potential students would be, are you aware of your breathing? And if someone would say yes and sense their breathing, and perhaps while I'm speaking now, kind of tune in and see if you can really follow your breathing, if you can be aware of your breathing. And then if the student was able to say, yes, I am aware of my breathing, then Buteyko would say, try reducing your breathing just a little bit. Now, with the type of medications that some of you are still taking, there is an anesthetic within that medication. So you will lose the feeling of sensation. You will not have the ability to be as sensitive to your breath. If you choose to proceed and learn the Buteyko method, in fact, you'll develop a lightness in your chest. Now, most of you that have breathing difficulties have just the opposite of that. It's a very heavy feeling. Breaths are labored. You feel them come in and out. Now, the beauty is, as you apply the method and you develop this light feeling in your chest, you're very aware of what throws it off. And after having a lifetime of trouble breathing, I personally cherish this feeling. So I protect it and I am aware of it, and it makes it very easy for me to stay focused on my breathing and to keep my breathing light. I can throw myself into disarray, I can hyperventilate, I can overexert myself. I also spend 2 hours in the gym every morning doing a very extensive workout. So my personal abilities have gone from being unable to move from one part of our property to another property. I could not go from a cottage to the main house. I couldn't be exposed to the elements, no matter what they were. I couldn't walk and breathe without having difficulties. I couldn't hold my breath without triggering hyperventilation. To kind of make a point to myself and everyone else about how much I improved, our center is in the woods in Woodstock, and we're up a long private driveway. A little while ago, I had 6 large triaxle dump truck loads of stone delivered to repair the driveway. A reasonable person would have certainly hired a contractor or a crew, or at least gone out and rented a piece of equipment like a bobcat or something to move it. In order to test my own ability, I spent a week doing that job with a wheelbarrow. And by applying Buteyko in motion, by staying aware of my breathing, by reducing my breathing, by doing the different exercises which we are able to teach you, I was able to work through that whole time frame. And an interesting thing for me was, although I became tired, I did not become physically sore. And I was, exhausted literally by the end of the day, but I didn't experience that kind of soreness you have if you work real hard on your property on the weekend, and then Monday you're back in the office, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe how much I hurt. With all of these matters of wheezing and coughing and suffocating, the important thing to really realize is they're all defense mechanisms. It's so simple that when you adjust your breathing properly, you raise the carbon dioxide level in the body. Now, that, as I say, Buteyko called the angel's wing over the body. When the carbon dioxide level is raised, the bronchial spasm relaxes. You lose the asthma. You also lose high blood pressure. We had a student who had atrocious migraines who was able to not only cure his migraines, eliminate them from his life, actually in about a month. First day he was with us was the last day that he had a migraine, and his name's Tom Fleming. Tom had went on medication when he was in 4th grade, and he was 28 years old. He's 29 now. He's 28 years old when he first worked with us. So the impact of the method is spectacular. That's kind of an overview of it. I'd like to go a step farther, though, so that you understand it. There's something called the Bohr effect, B-O-H-R. Now, that was a Danish scientist who discovered that if there is a shortage of carbon dioxide in the body, the oxygen bonds improperly with the hemoglobin in the bloodstream. Now, hemoglobin is the transport agent that the oxygen literally rides in throughout the body. And I often say to little kids that, Mr. Hemoglobin's got a car and Mr. Oxygen's riding in there with him. If Mr. Carbon Dioxide leaves the car, he locks the door. Now, in a more mature way of saying that, there is a necessity to have a molecule of carbon dioxide that the oxygen can bond to move out of the hemoglobin. Without that molecule of carbon dioxide, the oxygen is trapped in there. So you have an oxygen deficiency. So it's counterintuitive. It's a paradox. If you breathe too much, you do not get enough oxygen. Now, if you've ever overly exerted yourself or run too hard or worked out too hard or something of that sort, and you felt dizzy, that is the Bohr effect taking place. Now, Dr. Buteyko would do a test which he called a hyperventilation provocation test. He would take a new student and say, open your mouth and breathe as fast as you can. Tell me what happens. What are you experiencing? He would literally trigger an asthma attack for someone or a headache. One of our practitioners, Dr. Charles Labar, at our workshops will often demonstrate it because, candidly, I don't want to ask an asthmatic to trigger an asthma attack. And Charles's first response is he'll get a headache from the shortage of oxygen, from the blood vessels constricting. Then the next step that Dr. Buteyko would do would be to say, reduce your breathing. So by reducing your breathing, by relaxing and breathing less, you can eliminate many of the issues. And of course, if you find yourself walking too hard, if you find yourself pushing yourself too hard, you really need to back off of that. As people with asthma or breathing difficulties are challenged, we've kind of learned how to hyperventilate. In fact, I joke that we hyperventilate for a living. We've perfected that skill. In fact, we've needed to do that. So instead of pushing yourself through it, particularly if you're on medication that tends to anesthetize the body, instead of pushing yourself through it, take it easier.